So as we get started here today, we are really here because we're all just in pretty uncertain times right now. And I know that a lot of providers are working to open up as safely and as quickly as you can. There have been a lot of questions. There have been a lot of new developments as we've been moving through the last couple months here, and a lot of questions around schools reopening and everything there. And so we wanted to convene this group to just provide what information is available currently at this point in time. And I really want to emphasize that this is the information that is available at this point in time. We at the Utah Afterschool Network, as well as the Department of Workforce Services Office of Child Care, the State Board of Education, and the Office of Child Care Licensing are learning about several new developments at the same time as all of you are. And so we're trying our best to interpret information and to best understand information and to develop resources and responses to things as quickly as we can. So we're maybe a half step ahead of a lot of you most of the time, but doing our best to keep that going and everything there as well. So today we are joined by myself. I'll be speaking on behalf of the Utah Afterschool Network. We also have Rebecca Turville, who will be speaking on behalf of the Department of Workforce Services Office of Child Care, Camille Sheik, and Robert Palmer, who will be speaking on behalf of this Utah State Board of Education. And then we have Donna Thomas, who's joining us from the Department of Health Office of Child Care Licensing. The way that this meeting has been prepared for is you were all able to submit questions in advance, and we're going to be going through as many of those questions as we're able to. Some of those questions were addressing multiple agencies, so we're going to actually go through and give every agency a chance to respond to as many questions as they're able to. Those questions will be actually up on slides, so you'll be able to see your questions and their responses to that. And then we're going to be recording this as well. That's an important detail.
It's recording, Ben.
Okay, good. Excellent. Thanks for doing that. We're going to be recording this as well, and we will share it out on our website after this. And then we're taking all of the questions and answers that we will have as an end product from this meeting, and we'll be putting that out as an FAQ on the website as well. That will be available at utahafterschool.org. This will also, that FAQ will be a living document and will continue to evolve as information continues to evolve and become more available as well. And we'll be updating that regularly. So please make sure that you're checking with this as often as possible. We'll make sure that we're letting you all know as that becomes available as well. So our overall agenda for the day today is we're going to review the local and national after-school climate to just talk a little bit about what we're seeing in Utah, what we're seeing across the board throughout the United States. The Utah Afterschool Network has been working on some tools to help you all plan and be as prepared for the school year as possible. I'll be sharing that with you. And then we're going to talk to each of the agencies, and they're going to let you know what they're working on right now as their response to our current situation and everything that is happening right now. We will have our question and answer period after that, where they will be reviewing questions that you submitted in advance and then responding to them. And then once we're done with that, if you have questions as we go, if you have questions that pop up, if you didn't submit questions in advance, there are still opportunities for you to be heard today. Just go ahead and ask your questions in the chat box for this meeting, and we'll be keeping tabs on those throughout the meeting. And then at the end, we'll try to shore up as many of those as we can. And again, if you ask a question or if you have something on your mind, make sure you get it into that chat box. And even if we're not able to address it today, we will make sure that we address it in our FAQ that we provide out after this meeting as well. So we should be able to get to everything, if not today, then tomorrow. So thanks again, everybody, for being here and sharing your thoughtful questions and wanting to be a part of this conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into our current climate here so far in Utah. Earlier this, just as we were getting into the summer, or sorry, this was just last month. Who knows what day it is or where we are or what's happening anymore. I think that's like the obligatory statement you have to make for any one of these meetings at this point in the game, right? So basically, we at the Utah Afterschool Network contacted about 200 programs throughout the state to talk about what plans are going to be looking like as we're gearing up to reopen for the school year. From that, we discovered that 82% of the programs that we contacted are planning to offer a school year program. Of those, 38% are operating exclusively in person. 87% are planning to offer a hybrid of online and in-person programming. 30% plan to offer full-day programming if needed. That largely circulates around what your district and what your community's needs are going to be, and what answer you can meet for that. 44% are undecided on the full day. I think that we've all been watching closely as we've been watching district plans unfold to help you make those decisions, and some of that may be coming to a point right now as we're seeing some finalization on that for the time being. And 8% do not plan to offer full day programming. We did hear some common concerns from providers. Those largely were around funding, staffing, retaining and hiring staff, supporting staff throughout the year, transportation, how to move your youth to and from your program safely, or other things along those lines. And I'm going to ask that everyone just remains on mute throughout the duration of the meeting. You'll be able to type in any question that you have as we go in the chat box. Attendance, training, and available space. We also had a lot of questions around training for safety, addressing safety concerns, aligning with the school day, and things of that nature. On a national scale, we've seen a lot of very similar results from this. This is actually from a survey from the After School Alliance that was completed mid-summer. And so this was actually completed as a lot of districts were still figuring out their plans throughout the nation. There's still a lot of uncertainty. So the After School Alliance is actually preparing to do another survey within the next couple weeks, I believe, where they'll have more up-to-date information. So this is a snapshot from just before we started to get more answers from districts and departments of education. So from that survey, 30% of providers are going to be providing in-person programming, 39% are providing virtual, 27% providing hybrid, 5% have yet to determine what they'll be doing, and very similar concerns as well. 84% of those surveyed expressed concern about ongoing funding, 82% expressed concerns about health and safety guidance, 84% expressed concern about their ability to open it in the fall at all. And I anticipate that we would probably see a shift in that number at this point, since a little bit more time has gone by since we were originally seeing some school opening information coming out. And then 88% of programs express concern about their long-term stability in being able to remain open or operate in the future. This is a really great report that I'd encourage any of you to check out as well. I've got it linked here in this document. And again, we'll be sharing out these slides so you can get access to this. But they've got a lot of really good information that I think could be utilized in your partnering with schools in any advocacy or education purposes or anything along those lines. And there's a lot of value in seeing what is happening with other states all around the country. So as I mentioned before, we at the Utah Afterschool Network have seen that there's a tremendous need for additional resources and support as we're getting ready to open. Really, as we're getting into the school year, normally about this time of year, our out of school time specialists are reaching out to you to talk about setting your quality goals, getting observations going, beginning the quality self-assessment tool and things along those lines. This year, we really want to put our emphasis on making sure that you all feel comfortable opening safely. And so we're putting as many resources into that as we can. And then once we get to the point that we feel like everyone is more settled and feeling okay about where they're at, then we'll be able to start those conversations more about your quality improvement efforts and things that you'll have the bandwidth to be able to actually implement in your programming as well. So I'm going to show you really quickly here some of the resources that we've been putting together. Let me exit this full screen. All right, can everyone still see my screen pointing at the website? All right, excellent. So we have our FY21 school year planning toolkit. And really, we just tried to think of everywhere possible that you could use additional resources and guidance, particularly paying attention to safety and aligning with the school day. As I go down here, you can see we've actually added several different resources to guide you specifically in having conversations with your schools and with your school districts. Whether you're a program that's located in a school or you're a community program that partners with the schools, what is happening in your schools is going to really hugely impact how you proceed with your programming this year, what your demand is going to look like there. So we've put a lot of different things in here to support you along those lines, as well as peppering in some national resources as well. We do have a fall opening plan by district spreadsheet where we've been collecting and updating all information on all school districts around the state as well. So that's something you can check in on regularly for updates as they come along. We really recommend, as far as different safety concerns, that you follow the direction of the state, the CDC, as well as the Department of Education. And something that we did put in here as well that I just want to point out really quickly is the Utah Association of Local Health Departments. If you have any health concerns about the youth in your programs, or concerns or questions about opening up, you can actually get in here and you can find a contact for every health department in the state, every county health department in the state, which is just a nice resource. And lastly, we've just also been adding in additional tools on a national scale here as well. So please come in and check out all the resources that we're sharing with you and make sure that you're taking advantage of that. If you become aware of something that we don't have up, let me know what that is. Or if you're doing something that you feel is really effective in your program that you'd like to share, loop us into that conversation, and we would love to share what you're learning as you go. We are all in this position right now of learning all together and figuring out exactly what after school can look like this year. So we're all experts and we're all completely clueless all together in this at the same time. So lastly, this one is really important just to keep us abreast of any new developments for your program. We actually have a link here so you can update your program information as we go. So moving along now. So next up, we're going to move into each agency's updates on everything that they have going on. And so we're going to start off with the Department of Workforce Services, talking about the resources and work that they're doing right now. So Rebecca, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to make sure you can all hear me. I hope everybody's doing well. These are just some updates. We'll get to questions after USBE gives their update and childcare licensing. So for right now, we have the summer grant that is currently operating with many different programs who applied and around the state. We did offer an extension, and there are 10 programs or contracts that decided they can stay open longer to help serve their community. For the after for this coming up school year, right now from DWS, they will all be staying with the funding that's available now. We understand that there's different requirements in each of the different grant scopes of work. We will be working on how we can make sure that all current grantees are able to meet their contractual requirements. We don't have all those specifics, but that's something that we are very aware of, and we're making some progress with working on that. We're waiting on guidance with more funding that might be available. And as soon as we have any information about that, we will definitely put that out publicly. But at this time, we're just waiting on guidance. And then for observations for the grants, we aren't going to be doing any observations in person for the grant. So that is one thing we will be doing an addendum to current contracts. Other than that, right now, we're just, like I said, waiting for guidance from the feds on CCDF funding. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next, we're going to hear from the State Board of Education.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I appreciate you taking time. I know it's a very incredibly busy time. Before we get into some updates about the USBE after school funding, I want to share some resources. So on the Utah State Board of Education website, we have a whole variety of resources for anything related to coronavirus. So we have our framework. If you go to, so yeah, it's this little squiggly line here. That's our framework. So that's how USB is trying to focus on the future. So this is the framework we'll be using, the 3 phases to recovery. That's what we're framing our responses to the coronavirus pandemic. So please check that out. There's also information about reopening schools if you just scroll down a bit. Thank you, Ben, you're doing great. So there's all sorts of guidance around reopening schools. There's a handbook. There's also this very helpful decision-making process tree if you scroll down a bit, Ben. And it tells you who has the decision-making, what the decision-making process looks like for reopening schools, or if schools go on soft closure or dismissal again. This really lays out the details for you. We all know in the spring, the governor issued an executive action that suspended in-person school for public schools. But this shows you how it will work moving forward, so you can see who has that authority to do that, and it will be done in consultation with the local school, the local health department. Safety is at the foundation of everything we do. So definitely check through these resources. They're very helpful in just knowing what the next steps are, or if you're not sure how your district is moving forward. This would be a great place to check out. There's a lot of resources, so it can be overwhelming. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them to help you walk through all the resources we have. We also have a three-phase resource hub that has very excellent links to, if you're looking for social emotional resources, if you're looking for academic resources, if you want to send something out to parents, there's a lot of specific information there. Thank you, Ben.
All right, thank you very much, Camille. Sorry, this is loading.
Hi, everyone. I'm Robert Palmer. I work with Camille at Utah State Board of Education. The Utah State Board of Education oversees the 21st Century Grant, which is a federally funded grant program, and the Intergenerational Poverty Grant, often referred to as IGP, as well as the Program Quality Enhancement Grant, which is also referred to as PQE. These are state-funded grant programs. These grants all focus on academic achievement during non-instructional time. Thanks, Ben.
All right, and Donna, did you want to add anything about your slide here?
No, I mean, we really don't have any updates. We're in our phase 3 of the temporary emergency conditions. That letter went out the end of May to all providers who are regulated through child care licensing. So that's about the only update I have to share with everyone.
All right, thank you, Donna.
Welcome.
So moving on, we're going to get to our questions and answers. Again, any questions that you come up with, please add them to the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to them as well. So we're going to start off with, yes.
I apologize. I was
it's all right.
so embarrassed. Could we go back to our second slide?
Oh yeah, no problem.
I apologize. And then just one more.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone. As with DWS said, we are very flexible to the grant requirements. We understand these are not typical times, so we will have a process for any changes that need to come up because there are certain grant requirements you will not be able to meet. I think the word of the year is nimble when it comes to our programs. Our sole focus is we still want to support students and families, so programming will look much different, and we're open to those changes. We just need to communicate and work together so we can serve as many students and families as possible. And this is just a list of information. If you have any of the USBE after school grants around allowable costs, these things have been coming up a lot. There's going to be unique things that we never thought we would need. You know, who knew that maybe postage would be a really important thing if you want to send notes home to students. You might need more electronic purchases, including video conference platforms. We are open to that, but some of them, if they're not in your annual budget, we do ask that you pre-approve those purchases with your USBE education specialist. So thank you, Ben, for letting me go back.
Of course, sorry for skipping over that. Now we will move on to the question and answer period of our meeting today, and we're going to start off with the Department of Workforce Services addressing their specific questions.
Okay, so a lot of these questions that we got, some are very similar. Some might be a little bit different, so you might hear a little bit of repetition. And then also some pertain just to DWS, and then some just pertain to the Utah State Board of Education. So the first question, required monthly safety emergency drills. With DWS, our grants do not specify exactly what your drills need to be because everybody has different programs in different areas around the state. So with the guidance from the Utah State Board of Education manual, the CDC guidance, and your local LEAs for best practice to adhere to the required monthly drills for childcare licensing. Do we anticipate offering additional funding for the school year? DWS OCC is waiting for federal guidance to determine the level of support CCDF can provide to out-of-school time programs during the upcoming school year. And you can go to the next slide, Ben. Thanks. So what are the expectations of grantees when schools close due to outbreaks or certain groups of students and staff are needing to be quarantined due to exposure? In the event of an expected exposure, programs must work with their local health department to determine the risk and quarantine measures to be taken. Once the local health department has determined what your program must do, grantees should contact the program specialist here at DWS. So after you contact your local health department, then you'll let us know what at DWS what occurred or if you have to close. What is the expectation of in-person versus virtual programming? We are awaiting guidance still from the Federal Office of Child Care for additional information on that. Are considerations being put into place to address contract requirements that are not able to be met? And yes, DWS OCC is reviewing current grant requirements and will communicate details regarding the specific grants. DWS OCC is working on addressing all grant requirements to ensure that expectations can be flexible during the pandemic. Next slide. Do programs have to plan to have an alternate space ready in the event that a school program needs to shut down in order to meet minimum weeks requirements of the grant? Again, we are working on, DWS OCC is working on addressing all grant requirements to ensure that expectations can be flexible during the pandemic. The next question is, what reporting requirements will be in place for this year? And we will have those details to our current grantees for our current grants shortly, regarding the mid-year and annual reports, the quality tool, and other program information forms. I just have one more before we go to USBE. One last thing I want to say too about FAQs. We have on our website, which is jobs.utah.gov, and there's a COVID resource page. I didn't have a chance to add that to the slide, but we will definitely make sure it gets put on so that everybody can, on the recording, so everyone can access it if need be. So that's jobs.utah.gov, and it's the COVID resource page. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next up, we're going to hear from Camille and Robert with USBE.
Thanks, Ben. So I just wanted to remind USBE after school grantees of one more thing. We also will be aligning with DWS regarding observation. So we will not have in-person observations. I forgot to mention that. I got a bit flustered when I forgot to take my thing off mute. So similar to the DWS question, what happens if a school has to close? We want programs to work with their local health department, their local school district, and really what best practices do they need to do so everyone is safe. We do ask that you let us know that that's happening, and then we can talk about the next steps if there's some flexibility, if you can move to virtual funding with the USBE after school grant funding. We do allow virtual programming, so you could do that. Let's just keep in touch and see how things go. So we know that coronavirus is going to be here with us. We don't know for how long, but we really encourage you to make a contingency plan and try to work things out. You know, hopefully we're heading in a good direction in Utah with our numbers coming down, but you never know. So really making contingency plans with your staff, with all of your partners. If you have questions about that, reach out, connecting with your local school district, and we will allow virtual and hybrid academic enrichment and family engagement programming, but that has to be outside of instructional time. Next slide, please. So we will have an amendment, a change process in place for start dates, attendance requirements, operation hours, weeks, other grant components. I know partners might not be able to come into your building, whether that's a community center or school. So we will have a place where we can document that. As I said, we really want students and families to be served. So we're not going to pool funding if you can't meet certain requirements, but we do need to have that documented. We always want to protect anyone in case, say the federal government, our partners at Department of Ed decide to audit. We always want to have everything documented. So that's flexibility with our requirements. And you can use USBE after school funding for cleaning and personal protective equipment for the after school program, but those supplies have to remain with the after school program, whether that's before school, after school, summer. It has to remain with that programming only if there's no other funding such as CARES available to purchase those cleaning and PPE supplies. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Camille. This question is, if our community partners are not allowed into our facility, how will that affect us meeting the outcome of our grants? Will it count against us? What strategies can we implement to leverage community partners without bringing them into our facility? Once again, as Camille stated throughout this meeting, the Utah State Board of Education will allow flexibility with our grant requirements. There will be an amendment process in place to account for the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. The next question is, will you be encouraging schools across the state to work with after-school programs to find ways to ensure programming will be available? Yes, as we always have, we will continue to highly encourage collaboration between schools and after-school programs. Next slide, please. This question is, we have some students who regularly participate in our after-school programs, but who are unable to do so due to high health risks or parents opting into the off-campus learning program offered by our schools as they reopen. Would any of your grants allow for a blended program so that these students can continue to participate remotely? As Camille stated just a little while ago, USBE grant funding can be utilized for hybrid and virtual programming outside of instructional time. USBE after-school grant funding can be used during out-of-school time periods. The funding cannot be used during instructional time. Next slide, please. Okay, this question is, do you anticipate potential additional funding during this year? At this time, Utah State Board of Education Intergenerational Poverty Grant will be released next week. Please email me. My email address is robert.palmer@schools.utah.gov if you have questions. Camille, do you want to talk about the new USBE 21st Century Grant funding?
Yes, Robert, thank you. So we anticipate we will have a competition for new funding for 21st Century. That's a federal Department of Education grant in the spring. That's on the typical timeline. And then additionally, if you are a current 21st Century grantee and you're interested in college and career readiness and career pathways, we have an opportunity to apply for some funding as a Utah State Board of Education to Department of Education to get this funding to support career pathways and college and career readiness. If you're interested, please email me, and my email is listed. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Camille. And our final question is, any additional services for families who are suffering hard through the shutdowns, meaning budgeting, depression help, anxiety, and such? And below, we've linked some resources for supporting mental health and social emotional needs, as well as the 3 Phases Resources Hub as well. Next slide. Thank you, Ben.
All right. Thank you, Camille and Robert, for all of that. And Donna, you are up to talk about childcare licensing.
Okay, there is the question of any major procedural changes. Like I said, the only really change we have is the Phase 3 temporary emergency conditions. If anyone wants to look at the letter, it's on our website, but providers were emailed that letter the end of May. We don't know if there's going to be a Phase 4. As with everyone else, we're just taking it one day at a time. And if and when we decide there will be a Phase 4, providers will be sent an email with the details and effective date. How many groups of 20 are permitted? I just copy and pasted the answer from the letter, but basically you can, if you're regulated by child care licensing, you can have 20 groups of children with 1 caregiver, and groups of children have to be separated by full solid walls that are higher than 6 feet. How are inspections being handled? We are doing inspections. We all have face masks and shoe covers. We're continuing our process of washing hands before touching anything. And yeah, it's been fun. But we are still out there doing our inspections. We are also still running background checks. The fee for the background checks is temporarily waived. It's waived right now. And the requirement for the fingerprinting is waived right now because we know all of the fingerprinting locations are not open. At one point, fingerprints and the fingerprint processing fee will be required, even for those background checks which have already been run, and you will be notified when that requirement is in place again. There is a question about staff younger than 18 being allowed to work with youth. The rules and requirements haven't changed. 16 and 17-year-olds can be with the children in your program. as long as they're with a caregiver who's at least 18 years old and meets all of the requirements. The next one is kind of a long question, but it boils down to, do we accept electronic signatures for attendance records? Yes, we do. And I think this will be the third time this is said, but I'll say it again. If a student tests positive, if a staff person tests positive, someone is supposed to contact the local health department and follow their instructions. We are not closing or suspending any programs, but we do ask that you notify us if your program will be closed temporarily because of COVID.
Thank you so much for that, Donna. And thank you to all of our state agencies for taking the time to answer all of these questions. At this point, we are going to open it up to some of the questions that we've had coming in through the chat. Thank you for everyone who's been getting those into us so far. And actually, really quickly here, Camille has a follow-up. We had Kathleen Riggs who asked about any non-alcohol hand sanitizers for sensitive skin that we can maybe help them get a hold of. And Camille, you have an answer for that?
Oh, I could just try to follow up with someone
great.
to see if we can, I'm not aware of any at this time. I don't know if Donna is aware, but, or if anyone else from our team knows.
I'm not aware of any.
Great. So we'll all put our feelers out to see what we can find for you to help you out with that. So Kelly has been keeping track of questions that have been coming into the chat box and is going to help us to navigate those new questions with our partners here as well.
Well, I think our partners must have done a really good job because we haven't had a ton, so congratulations. A question that Liz Rich brought up in the beginning was around FERPA documents, but it was kind of batted around in the chat box. So we'd love to see, if other people are interested in, maybe that's something we can have on our website or some examples of FERPA documents. Camille said that she will follow up with Whitney at the Utah State Board of Education, who, I forget her exact title, Camille, but over data.
She's our Chief Data Privacy Officer.
There you go. And then Carrie Maxon, she has an example that that maybe can be shared, and it looked like a couple other people were interested in getting access to that shared document. And then Camille answered a question already in the chat box. Someone still was a little unclear if funding could specifically be used for programs that are open all day. This particular program is looking at being offered 11 hours a day versus 4 or 5 hours a day. And Camille answered that in the chat box, that USBE grant funding can be used outside of instructional time. Rebecca, I don't know if you can give any additional guidance to that question, or maybe reiterate what you've said before.
Read the, can you tell me the question one more time? I don't have the chat box up.
Yeah, the question is, will there be additional funding for programs that are looking at being open all day, around 11 hours versus 4 to 5 hours?
Yeah, that's where we will let people know as soon as we get more guidance on what CCDF regs are going to be from the federal office, and if they're, what type of funding will be available. As soon as we know, we're going to let the public know.
Thanks, Rebecca. Camille, there's a question for you. Have all new 21st century grants been awarded for this upcoming year?
Yes, and I'll follow up with Mr. Torrey offline.
Great. Donna, there's a question for you. Will we continue to do monthly fire drills and the evacuation drills twice a year?
Yes, none of the rules have changed. So you'll still have to do those drills and document them.
And that's all the questions we have right now. So Ben, I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent. Well, that is everything that we, yeah. Well,
so we have one more, sorry, Megan Shaw. Sorry, Megan, I wasn't sure. It says Salt Lake City School District has a release of information, but it is hard to capture that information from parents right now. And she's wondering if Donna has any clarification. Megan, you might need to Let's
I'm
see,
not
Megan.
sure what information she's means.
So she says we will have to go back and pay for the waive. Will we have to go back and pay for the waived BCI fees?
It's my understanding you won't have to go back and pay for the $20 fee. Used to be $18, but you will have to go back and pay the $33.25 fingerprint processing fee. That is the information right now at this minute.
Someone else is also wondering, Donna, will you send out a notice regarding the app for electronic signatures?
No, we'll accept the electronic signatures, but we don't promote one app or any way of getting those.
This might be open for all of our panelists. Thoughts and guidance on mingling small groups for specific activities. Small groups taken from the groups of 20. So if you have like a larger group and maybe you're breaking those groups down into smaller groups, is there any guidance on maybe mingling some of those kids? I think that's the question.
I would say whatever the safest way to keep from spreading would be up to each program and organization's local health department on those kind of things. We're not recommending how groups can operate really. So I would follow what the regulations are for what the health departments are saying.
And if I can add into that as well, something that could be helpful in addition to making sure that you're following that local guidance from your local health departments is we do have a number of different activities at utahafterschool.org. We've actually put together some that are social distance activities that could be helpful for you this as well. So make sure you check out our fall planning tools and look specifically to the activities area for a few different ideas that could be helpful for you there.
Another question that's come in is secondary schools in Granite will not have in-person programming on Fridays. For these days, what time would be considered instructional time when we would not be able to offer our programs?
I can answer that question, Kelly, for the USBE grant funding. So it would be ideal if grantees can connect with their local schools and school district to find out exactly what time is going to be considered instructional versus what time is not considered instructional. There has been a waiver to the requirement for 990 hours for the school year for instructional time that school districts can apply for the waiver and submit that to the Utah State Board of Education. So we would ask that you reach out to your schools and your school district. And if you have any questions about or the best way to approach that, please contact myself or Robert, and we're happy to have an additional conversation offline to address that. But the first step would be connecting with your local school and school district.
For DWS to answer that, Brandis, right now, the only funding is the TAP grant if you have that contract. And we're just going to be notifying all current grantees of what the program requirements will be in regard to what's happening now, but we don't have specifics yet for each grant. So the program specialists will be getting information out to each of the grantees.
I think some of the questions are specific to their program. So is it okay if we encourage grantees to reach out directly to you guys, Megan, Rebecca, Camille, and Robert, to talk about specifics for their program? Okay. Are there any other questions at this moment? As Ben said, things change every day, but this is the best information we have right now. If there's no other questions, I'll have Ben take it away.
All right, great. Thank you everybody for all of those questions. And if you have additional questions that you'd like to ask this group, you are welcome to continue to contact me as well, and we can get that out. It is nice for us to be an entry point for those questions, just so that we can make sure that they're included in our FAQ as well. So you can even email me at bent, B-E-N-T, at utahafterschool.org. And again, if you do have grant specific questions, we will encourage you to reach out to DWS or USBE. If you have a general question and you're not sure exactly where it needs to go, they're always welcome at UAN, and we can help you get the information that you need there as well. And again, this will all be available. We'll be sharing this, a recording of this meeting, as well as that FAQ that we'll be getting up this week sometime as well, that will have up-to-date answers for you as well. And I just can't emphasize enough that there is new information coming out regularly. We even toggled with whether it was too soon or too late to even have this meeting, but there's just not going to be a point that we're like, we have all the answers, we know everything that we need to know right now. And so there's a possibility that we could do something similar again in the future as more information becomes available. We'll just have to see how things continue to develop. So thanks again to all of our partners for joining us today and taking the time to answer all these questions for everybody. And thank all of you for joining us today as well. It was great to see everybody. I can't wait until we're all in a big crowded room together, not afraid of one another and everything like that too. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great day. And please keep in touch with any additional questions or concerns or anything that comes up, and look to our growing resources as we're getting those out as well. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day.
Ben, I'm going to stop recording.